much, everyone, for being here today. My name is Wendy Day Brown, and I am here from UCI Alumni Association, and I have the privilege to work with this wonderful group of Anteaters, the Black Alumni chapter. And you have an amazing amount of information that we're going to go through today. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Lolita Brown Fletcher, who is the chapter's executive vice president. So sit back, everybody, enjoy, and here is Lolita. And maybe not. It looks like Lolita might be frozen. I think Lolita is frozen. So maybe when she comes back in, we can have her come back and say a few words. But Lolita was going to introduce, there, darn, she's gone. I think she was having internet issues, she had mentioned earlier. So our next person in line is going to be, was it Arnicia? All right, Arnicia, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome all of you to our health and wellness webinar today, a series, a Black perspective. And today we will be discussing wealth and your way to a million. And so we have today a road to 1 million, building financial wealth and home ownership. That is the title. We want to thank you all for coming. And it's still not too late to register everyone and have everyone get in. So please share the link with your friends and family as they can still jump on the webinar as we are going through this. Today we will have a few distinguished keynote speakers or lecturers or panelists, whichever you like to call them, that will be introduced in a little bit. But we have a few housekeeping tips for you today. So there are a few things you should know. One is that we need you to pay attention because there will be an opportunity drawing for you to win a $25 gift card to Amazon. And so we're looking forward to give that away. I think we have 3 gift cards that we'll be giving away today. If I'm not sure on the number, but we will have gift cards for the winners, first, second, and third place. And so, and then the second thing is we will need for you to make sure you stay muted. And all questions will go in the Q&A section. So if you have a question, it's really critical to put it in the Q&A section because we will be looking in that section to ensure that all of your questions get answered. And then lastly, we do have a disclaimer. And so at this time, the disclaimer is that the information presented in today's event is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal or other professional advice on any subject matter. University of California, Irvine, UCI Alumni Association, the Black Alumni Association, and webinar panelists do not accept any responsibility for any loss which may arise from reliance on information presented in today's event. Some of the links that we share may lead to websites operated and maintained by third parties. We are providing these links solely as a convenience, and the presence of such links do not imply any responsibility for the link site or endorsement of the link site, its operator, or its contents. So this is our webinar disclaimer. We want you to be familiar with it. And as we move through the session, you will have a master moderator by the name of Sandra Rosenfeld. And so she is a distinguished alum, and we are happy to have her as part of our committee to actually present and put on these wealth or health and wellness series. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Sandra to the stage.
Thank you for that warm welcome. I really do appreciate that. And thank you to everyone that has joined us today. We are just so happy that you're here, and I'm really happy and looking forward to this discussion. I know I say that in all of our sessions. I know I've said that before every single time, but I'm just excited about this topic because I know that this is something that is not only top of mind for me and my family and my loved ones and friends, but I'm sure you probably feel the same way. And that's the reason why you're here. And so I hope that with that, as we don't move into this discussion and presentation, you are able to learn something. And with that learning, you are able to take action to really help yourself and help your family. So with that said, we are going to cover a lot. Arnesia did say that earlier. So make sure that you have a pen and paper because, or even if you decide that you want to just type the notes on your device, do that too. But we just really encourage you to take notes because there is going to be a lot of information shared and a lot of things that you may want to think about in terms of how you want to move next or some things to consider. So with that said, we'll move right along. So when it comes to Black home ownership, for some of you folks who already have a home or don't have a home, you're probably aware of a lot of the challenges that have come along with that process. And thinking about, okay, where do I go to find a legitimate realtor who can help me in this process? Help me, not only help me with the process, but help me understand what steps do I need to take? Because it can be a very daunting process. So as you think about that and just think about it from a historical perspective, as you can see on the screen here, when it comes to Black home ownership in California specifically, it actually has, the current rate has been, according to the California Housing Finance Agency, the numbers are pretty disappointing. It's dismal. So they're at a rate now that it was lower than it was in the 60s. And that was at a time when it was legal to discriminate against Black families to buy a home. So when we look at the 2019 statistics, we're seeing that Black families, 41% of Black families own their home, whereas compared to white families, it's about 68%. And so we've been seeing this trend decade after decade after decade. And so there's a lot of factors that play into this. As you know, there's policies, the discriminatory regulations that are in place, such as redlining. And then if you just break it down even further, there's indirect actions that are taking place along that process in terms of who you work with and to try and get a loan or qualify for a mortgage. And so it's pretty dismal, but nonetheless, we're not sharing this with you to discourage you in this process, but just more or less just to share with you as to what is happening. When it comes to the racial wealth gap, these were some stats that I thought that was surprising, but yet optimistic. So when it comes to Black households, about 35%, 33% of them rather, in 2019 actually owned stocks, whereas white households, it was about 61%. Now, this is all stemming from the fact that when it comes to stock ownership rates, when you look at the history of that, it all stems from financial literacy education. So when you look at the continued history of racism, you are seeing that you have, as a population, there is this mindset, this mentality, there's this thinking of not having this information and being able to find good, credible information, being able to find people who can inform you and let you know what steps to take to make good decisions on how to go about buying stocks. And for many folks, they don't have the discretionary income to be able to invest in stocks because whatever money that they have or whatever funds that are available, that is going into the immediate need for themselves and for their families. But as time goes on, we know that the financial markets have recently changed with the introduction of Bitcoin and Ether and Solana, and all of that has really opened up the playing field slowly. And we're seeing that there's a change there. And as you can see on the screen with that stat, 30% of Black investors under 40 got into the market for the first time in 2020. And so we're seeing that slow change, that slow tide, and people being interested in the stock market. And we can see that in this generation and the generation after that, we're going to see great changes there. When it comes to retirement, we are in a bit of a crisis. And I use the word crisis is because we are noticing that there are many people who are struggling just to be able to come up with to be able to develop with an adequate retirement plan. Because for some folks, they are working in jobs that do not offer retirement plans, like a 401k. There are some folks who, if they do have 401k, they are actually dipping into those funds to be able to help take care of any emergencies that have come up in their family. And at the same time, and just thinking about, there's this heavy reliance and dependence on Social Security. And so we have to just think about retirement in a way that we're not just going to solely think about, okay, so Social Security will save me, that will take care of me, and I will be fine. We have to really think about the different ways to really help fund our retirement, regardless of what age you are right now. There is a way to think about that. So I just wanted to preface that with that bit of information. So with that said, I will turn it over to our wonderful experts to be able to walk us through some of the actions that we can take today to be able to think about financial investments, home ownership, and retirement. So we have our lovely speakers today. We have John Elston and we have Josh Jogwe to talk to us about that. So again, get your pens ready. We have 3 different sections, 3 different parts we are going to talk about. Our first part will be about savings and budgeting. Our second part will be about investments. And our third and final part will be about home ownership and real estate. So with that said, we'll go right into our first part. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to mention, with respect to our speakers, please look into the chat. We will have a link there so you can read through the bios of our wonderful speakers so you can see they have a very impressive background within the financial investments industry, as well as home lending and home and real estate industries. So I encourage you to read through that. So with that said, I will turn it over to John and Josh to start the conversation.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you taking the time. We know there are a lot of things that people could have been doing this morning, but again, we appreciate you taking the time to be here this morning. A few things, and you know, when you heard the music in the background, that song was selected. It's called Overworked and Underpaid. And it's by Kirk Whalum, and it's an homage to Grover Washington Jr. And that is a lot of what we go through is we're overworked and we're underpaid. But today what we want to try and do is, and Sandra brought up some very interesting numbers, statistics, and information with regard to home ownership, wealth, so on and so forth. And although we know a lot of that exists, Josh and I want to kind of take a few minutes of your time this morning and share every bit of information we know, because we always say the best decision is an informed decision. And our job this morning is to try and pass out any bit of information that we can. So again, I want to say thank you for this morning. And I know Josh wants to say a few words, and then we'll talk about why this topic and so on and so forth.
Yeah, we've been working for a while and trying to help everyone within a short period of time. So we're excited to be here and help out and help hopefully bridge this gap, you know, in any way we can. So by giving the amount of info that we can and helping you guys achieve financial wellness. So I'm ready to start.
So we're going to say, first of all, I want to start with kind of why this topic and, you know, why we want to talk about money. And if you learn nothing else today, remember this much: no one, and I mean no one, everybody in the room, everybody you know, no one should have more interest in your money and managing your money, controlling it, planning your destination than yourself. And again, as I said earlier, the best decision is an informed decision. So with that said, particularly with technology the way it is today, we want to make sure that, you know, again, if you understand that the learning is not as difficult, you don't have to be an expert to know something, but you do have to be able to manage your money. Otherwise, we see some of the things we see with professional athletes, entertainers, and it happens down to everyone. people end up hiring financial advisors, so on and so forth, and you end up losing your money. So again, that's the number one rule. The other reason we're here too is one of the other reasons is as you look forward now, more companies are getting out of the ideal of providing long-term retirements for people. And in the past, I know companies have done that, but more companies are going toward 401ks or not even having a 401k. And they're putting the responsibility back on you as an employee to be able to provide for your retirement, take care of your financial future, so on and so forth. So in order to do that, again, I think that the education of or educating people really needs to happen, because in our communities, it makes it even worse when that happens. So again, that's one of the other reasons we're being there.
And
the other
because
one I thought of
cheaper.
is, and I wrote down a few different notes, there's something called an IRA catch-up rule, which Josh will talk about later. And basically the thought process is most people have not paid into their retirement. So when you reach a certain age, you can start adding to your retirement. But again, our job is to try and share that with you so you know and you have an idea. The other thing we'll talk about briefly at some point is there is a fine line between what's illegal and what's immoral. And so obviously we don't want to go into the illegal field, but we do want to just mention that some of what happens sometime in the world of finance is certainly immoral, and some of it is just not knowing. So again, our goal today is to be able to provide you as much information as we can. And I have a few more things that we'll share at the end, but last but not least, I'll say, and Josh and I have talked about it, and I know I've talked with Sandra and Arnesia, our role is to make sure that each generation gets better. So with that, we're going to start with some basic stuff. And I think I don't know if Josh, you wanted to add anything else to that, sir?
No, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of the topics. I know when we were talking about the difference between companies. So previously companies used to give you pensions, but it's gotten a lot more expensive for them over the years. So that's the reason why we actually now have 401ks, because they don't contribute as much and companies are going bankrupt providing pensions for a lot of people. So that's the reason why they switched. And so that's why now the burden is more on everyone. So why we have to be more informed. It's not as much of a safety net. So yeah, so saving and investing.
So we're going to start with, and the reason we entitled it A Road to $1 Million is that's kind of a number that we kind of just put out there to say, okay, when you get to a certain age, when you get to a certain point, whether you're retiring or whether you want to buy a house, there's numbers you need to look at. But our job is to try and, again, put something together that talks about the road to at least $1 million, because it's not about just where you are today. And it doesn't matter what age you're at, but it's about where you're going to be tomorrow. So we're going to start with a budgeting exercise. And I think I'm going to share, and Sandra, did that already get passed out by chance? The budgeting screen?
No, we can share that in the chat. Is that
Okay.
what you're referring to? The spreadsheet with the budget?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start, and I'm going to go in and give everybody a couple of minutes, a second or so to go through. And here's the first thing we suggest is, and that is that have a budget. I know it's real easy with technology to not have to record everything down. And so what we did is, this should be in the chat room. And someone can let me know if it's in there, hopefully. But when we put this in the chat room, and it's just putting together a budget, and the numbers, if you go down to the bottom first, I think it's this is an Excel spreadsheet, and everybody will have this and no one else can see what you're looking at, or if you're putting your own numbers in. If you want to just calculate your pay, down there from lines 39 to 43 will give you an information of calculating your pay. But we want to work with net income. And again, this is just something I learned over the years, and I still use it today, years and years later. And so here's my budgeted amount in line C, and I'll highlight it there. In line C4, you see what I'm budgeted amount. So let's see what actually happens. And I'll tell you why we're going to do this at the end. So let's say my income, and this is my net income. And for those who don't know, net income is what I take home. Gross income is what my earnings are before any deductions, taxes, expenses, etc. So let's say my take-home pay is $4,500. And I'm going to just run through this real quick. I earned some money on the side. I babysit John's kids. If you know John and Sugar, you know their kids are real bad, so you're paying a little extra to watch them. So now I have a gross income of about $5,000. let's say my rent is actually $1,500. And I'm going to come back to my savings. Health and other insurances, my life insurance, so on and so forth, is about $50. And my gym membership is $25. And I'll keep going through. And my groceries are about $300. Gas for the car, because I'm doing a lot of telecommuting and working from home, has gone down a little bit. So it's only $200. Cell phone, we'll put in that, and I'll use the exact numbers that I have. My car payment, my car insurance, and let's see here. And then we'll put in a couple credit card payments that we have, and then entertainment. So when you look at everything at the end of the day, it shows that we had 5,000 in income, but our expenses were 3,500, but our net remaining income is 1,500. One of the first things you should do is always pay yourself, because we don't see that as an expense, but we always go back and tell people, pay yourself. So if I took the entire 1,500, let's say if I want to leave a little money in my account, so I have something between now and my next payday, I'm going to put $1,000 aside. This is something, if nothing else, again, I can tell people, pay yourself. It works all the time, because this is how you save. So when you see the net, you can do that. And then you go back, and I'll go back and change a couple of numbers. When you have income, try and always add to that pay yourself. So I got a tax refund this month, and my tax refund was $2,500. Maybe I'm going to spend $500 of it, but now my income is going to go up to, my savings is going to go to $3,000. And I know Josh is going to go through a lot in talking about savings, but again, I just put this out there so everyone can kind of see what it looks like. I think there's one again in the chat room, and we want to be able to talk about it. So when you get a chance, go through a budget and work it yourself, so at least you have an idea of where you stand, what you need to do, and what changes need to happen to do that. So we're going to talk about the mentality of watching money grow. And I think, Josh, you want to start there? And
Yeah. And so we were talking about the difference between saving and investing first. And basically, so saving is a kind of a lifestyle, right? So in order to have an emergency fund, we kind of suggest having about 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved away in case of emergencies. So John's going to talk more about that later, but that's just the baseline. And the long-term view of watching your money grow. So basically, over the past 30 years, the stock market has done actually about 10.9%. So if you were to take $10,000, put it in an account, right, it grows for 30 years, you'd have about $200,000. But the thing is, you have to have patience. So that is the idea is, even though something happens tomorrow, you see a dip, you have to have the ability to withstand that in case for the ups and downs. So that is kind of the long-term view, and you have to hold. So even whatever was happening this past week with a lot going on, right, and fears, it doesn't necessarily mean that, for example, if it's Apple that went down, is it going to go away, right? If you really believe in something, then you might want to hold. So that is part of the long-term mentality.
So the other thing we've done is we've put in here in the chat, I think is going to go in some articles of interest that you can read, and it's in the chat room. Josh and I are both, and we'll both talk about it. We read everything we can, and I would advise everyone, read everything you can. And we put some articles in there of things we thought that were important. So when you get a minute, I'm not going to go through and list them all, but there are some articles in there, and they talk about everything from stocks to buy, capital gains, retirement, how much money you should have, so on and so forth. Take the time to go through and read. And fortunately, everything is on, or most of everything is either on TV, it's on your phone, so on and so forth. Take the time and spend some time and effort and energy reading and going through everything. There's a lot of invaluable information that you'll find.
Yeah.
The other thing that we want to talk about is building a team. And this is probably more critical than anything else. Build a team of financial people around you. And so your team should include, if I, God have everyone, it should include your CPA or your tax preparer, because they're the ones that are going to tell you, here's what's going to work for you now in retirement. Here's what you need to do. Here's the best way to handle your taxes. I know people can go through, and I forget the name of the company, but you can go through some of them and do your taxes yourself, which is great. But make the tax people and your CPAs, they have the latest information on the tax laws, what's going to work for you, what you can do, and so on and so forth. Because the goal for most people is to try and reduce their taxable income. Very simply is to, if you can reduce your taxable income, that's more money to put in my pocket. So your number one person is your CPA. Your second person is your financial planner. And Josh can probably talk to more of why you need a financial planner in your life.
Oh, right. Yeah. So planning for the long term, in different things, like in case your kid wants to go to college, planning to buy a home. So kind of putting all those things together. It's not just about picking your investment allocation. So financial planners do a lot of different things. CPA, John, you touched on, financial planner, estate planning attorney, for when you guys want to make a later, a will and a trust. So, and then what were some of the other ones there, John?
And the other one I would add is always have a lender in your pocket. So somebody can tell you, here's what the numbers look like. Whether you're buying a house, whether you're buying a car, talk with someone and kind of know, what do the numbers need to look like? What are my payments going to look like? So on and so forth. What are things I can do? And I'll talk more about lending when we get into the last part of it. And then the other thing I would recommend is put together a team of yourself. More people get together now, and just get together 4 or 5 of yourselves. If you talk once a quarter, once a month, everybody explore something different and exchange ideas. That's the network that happens that, again, a lot of times people aren't aware of. So put together your friends, find articles, find things to talk about, find suggestions that you want to have, but put together a network. And again, it works for you. So the other thing I'm just going to mention real briefly, because we're not going to go into it, on your insurance, make sure you look at your insurances, make sure they stay current, number one. If you own a home or you're buying a home, look at bundling, make sure you have enough insurance to cover yourself. Because when we talk about finance, one of the things that happens is you have your life insurance through your company, but I just got another offer. So now I'm going to a new company and I no longer have life insurance with that company. So when something happens, you want to make sure you have insurance that stays regardless of where you go and what company you go with. And you want to make sure your insurance changes. When you talk to your financial planner, they'll tell you your insurance changes depending upon your life situation. I have 0 kids and it's just myself, or I have 3 kids and a spouse. So again, you want to make sure you look at that.
And could I touch on that for a second, John? So
go right ahead.
Sometimes, so what John is talking about, sometimes with your health or life insurance, when you leave a job, you might be able to take it with you, but the problem is that the premium, so the price goes way up. So a lot of times you're not able to take it with you because it's so expensive. So it doesn't make sense to keep your old employer's insurance. So what John is saying, that on certain circumstances, it might be better to have outside insurance, so that in case you do end up leaving a career, or you start a job and you're like, I don't really see myself being here for a long time, when you leave, it's not an issue because it's portable. So something to consider.
And I think probably the last thing we want to talk about in this section, and I'm going to turn it over to Josh, is saving versus investing. And both of us have talked about, number one is emergencies happen. Number two, your savings or investment, you should have an emergency fund that's equal to anywhere between 3 and 6 months of your net take-home pay. So you can live for the next 3 to 6 months. As we've seen with COVID, jobs have changed, people have lost jobs. Even before COVID, companies say we're going a different direction, whatever the case may be. Make sure you have enough money to take care of yourself for 3 to 6 months, because things happen, whether you're single, whether you're a parent, emergencies happen. So when I went through the budget exercise and I talked about paying yourself, one of the first things you want to do is make sure you establish something, because calling mom and dad isn't the emergency thing. as most parents will tell you, but you want to have an emergency fund. So put something, and it's not big dollars and cents all the time. Sometimes is I've been told it's called base hits, just one at a time, $50, $100, whatever you can put aside, but make sure you have an emergency fund.
Yeah. And John, I wanted to, just before we started, quickly on, we were talking about podcasts and reading and some sites, I believe, to talk about. So I personally like reading a lot. We talk about that's one of the best ways to kind of further your knowledge in, well, I mean, in a lot of things, but obviously in the finance and investing game. And I read a lot of books. So some of my favorite books we have here listed for you guys. So it's called One Up on Wall Street. It's by this investor named Peter Lynch. He was a fund manager for like 30 years. And it was written in about 1984, but it's amazing how something from the past can still have a lot of application today. And you can find a lot of things you can learn. So that one, there's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the famous book, Robert Kiyosaki, Psychology of Money, The Millionaire Next Door. That one I'm currently reading right now. And The Little Book That Beats the Market. In addition to sites that you can really look at is Yahoo Finance, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Bloomberg. You can just, even if it's 2 minutes a day in the morning when you get up and you know what's going on in the world. And once you start having that information of what's going on, it makes it a lot easier when you start building wealth and all that. And then if you're on the move, yeah, I'll repeat the books, Arnisha. Millionaire Next Door, One Up on Wall Street, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Psychology of Money, and The Little Book That Beats the Market. And so if you're on the move, sometimes you don't always have the time to read and do all that. You can listen to podcasts. Sometimes I like listening to them as well. I have few here to listen. Now, we don't endorse all these and all the stuff that is said on all of them, but it's just a good piece that maybe you can hear something and take something from something you hear. So there's Earn Your Leisure podcast, The Rich Dad Show, Mad Money with Jim Cramer, The College Investor, and The Money Guy Show. So I believe those are all, we have those in a doc to share, so people can see those as well. So, all right, I think we're good.
So Josh, you're going to go into investments and part 2 of our presentation at this point. And
before we do that,
I'm sorry.
I just want to say that was just the first section, folks. Did you notice all of the gems that were just dropped? Like, that was a lot of good information. And I'm just sitting here taking notes on all of this stuff. And I just think it's so good. I mean, some of the things that you're sharing, we are already familiar with it, but some of the things that are very interesting, good resources. So I appreciate you sharing about the podcasts, the books, and all that. And I think that's really good. And even though with books, some folks, they may feel like I don't have the time to like open up a book because I'm on the move. I'm always on the go. Hey, there's no excuse. You can get an Audible. You can get an audio book and just listen as you're on the go while you're driving or you're cleaning up your place, whatever. You're at an appointment, you're waiting for your turn. So I think all these different resources that are out there for you, they are packaged in a way that can make it convenient for you. So there's no excuse in learning this information. And one thing that I do want to just emphasize that John said early, right off the top, he said, and forgive me if I don't quote you in the way that you actually said it, but I wrote it down that no one should have more interest in your money than you. And so I'm taking that as no one's going to save you, right? No one's just going to come and say, you've done such good work, here's a check, right? So for you and your family, like, we need to be proactive in getting this information and investing in ourselves and then really just trying to set ourselves up to help our families and to help the next generation of folks that are in our families. So I just wanted to take a moment and just acknowledge that, so that way we all are mindful of that, because I said, you all just shared a lot of information. And so I'm just excited for that. And also have a money team. That's a good point. I like that. Have a money team. I never really sort of thought about it like that, but I appreciate that. So with that said, I'll turn it back to you. I know you said we're moving on to the next section, right?
Yep. And we'll take Josh off mute, and Josh is going to take it away, I believe.
The presentation.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And also I saw in the chat, yeah, that's a great book, Wendy. Okay. All right. So yeah, so wealth building pillar number 2, we're going to talk about investments, investment accounts, retirement accounts, and all the above. So let's get started. Okay, so why we invest. So a lot of the issues on investing are tied back to inflation. So yesterday's price is not today's price. So over time, the value of the dollar decreases. A cheeseburger today is not worth, you won't be able to buy as many things tomorrow. So one of the ways that you can kind of combat this is by investing in securities. So securities meaning things that can appreciate in value over time. So stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and options. So all varying types of difficulties. So stock is a security that represents ownership of a part of a corporation. So when you own a stock, you actually are a part owner of a company. So if you own a stock in Lululemon, you're actually a part owner in that. And you get information before the general public might you see it. So you have access to their reports, which a lot of that is public information, but you can actually listen into their earnings call and hear all the info that's coming out. Like, oh, they're coming out with a new menswear line that might come out. So you have that before people might see that. You're also entitled to share in the profits when companies pay dividends. So when they make over a certain amount, a lot of times some companies will give back to their shareholders. It's kind of like a thank you for investing. And depending on how many votes you have, how many shares you have of the company, that'll mean one vote. So CEOs might have a really strong ownership in interest in that company. So then their votes hold more power, as well as some of the board. So bonds are a fixed income investment. So it's kind of like an IOU. It's between, could be the government or a corporation. And basically it's like a loan that you give them and they pay it back to you over a certain number of years. So you're actually a creditor. So the difference between a bond and a stock as well is if a company goes bankrupt, the people that own bonds will actually get paid out first. So if you own stock in the company goes bankrupt, you might not get anything. But if you own bonds, then you're almost guaranteed to get your money back. So mutual funds are a type of investment vehicle made up of a pool of money by many investors used to invest. So, and they can be a mix of a lot of different things. It can be stocks, bonds, just straight cash. And mutual funds, the difference between mutual funds and ETFs right here is that mutual funds have portfolio managers, and basically they're a pool of different investments and they can change. So because they can be changed, they have a little bit higher of a fee than an ETF, because ETFs are just set. They might have 10 stocks and they don't change at all. And so that is that reason. And then options are very speculative and they are kind of riskier. So I wouldn't suggest them for any beginner investor. But they're based on, oh, is there a question? Okay. All right, I will answer the question at the Q&A. So I didn't see it, sorry. It's a financial derivative. So it's basically those individuals that do day trading. And you can bet on the price of a stock going up and down into like a future time period. It's also when people talk about shorting, that is an option. So that's a put contract. So in case the value of a stock goes down, hedging your bets. So we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, 401k. So this is for mostly everyone. A lot of us have 401ks. It's a type of retirement savings plan offered by employers that has tax advantages for us. So usually the way it works is a percentage of your paycheck goes directly into this fund. So you're actually paying yourself first. When John talked about paying yourself first through all this, this is one way that you actually already doing it by you don't even know about it. You just have to contribute. So the national average for contributions and matching, when I talk about annuities, yes, it is an annuity, the chart. Okay, yeah, so 4.3% is the average match, meaning if you put up to a certain amount of your paycheck, your company will actually contribute money and into that for you. So the difference between a pension and this, right, they used to give you a percentage of your income for the year. So say you make $100,000, or say we're going to pay 15% of that and put it directly into this account for you. And every 5 years, you're going to get, or every year you'll be gradually, you'll vest, you'll have a chance to get some of this money. In the 401k, they're not really doing that anymore. They're just, because it's a lot cheaper for these companies to do that. So the one big thing that you have to look at in 401ks is actually, what are you investing in? Legally, they only have to have 4 options for you. A lot of times they don't. They do have more, but they have what are called target date funds. So it might say Vanguard 2060. What they're doing is they're just basically projecting how long is it until you retire. And in those funds, the way that they work is they actually change as you get closer to retirement. They start going more conservatively. They might be a little bit more aggressive, and then changing conservatively as you get closer to retirement. And that could be good or bad, just for the reason that, say, when you get closer to retirement, maybe you're actually trying to kick up your investments and your risk, so then you can make more. And you don't want to be all in bonds, or there might be a bad bond environment. So you want to have more control of, your investments and your basically your retirement. So it's just a good idea. Take a look at it. You can see what companies are in there. Maybe they have Meta or Facebook, and you really hate that company, and it's part of there. So something to look at, something to consider. Rollovers. So when you actually move jobs, a lot of times your 401k will stay with your old employer. And with your old employer, so you can actually take that money and put it into your new employer plan, or you can move it into another rollover IRA. And a lot of times the reason why you might do that is maybe your new employers, their 401k isn't as good. You don't have a lot of options. You don't like the options. So you might move it into a rollover IRA where you have more control over it. The contribution limit is about $20,500 for 2022. It just got upped by 1,000. And if you're over 50, you can actually do called a catch-up contribution, where you can add more on there. And then right here we have at the bottom, we have a little bit more info on loans, so you can take loans against them. And this is, there might be a lot of questions on all these hardship contribution withdrawals, because if you actually, since it's a retirement account, if you take out money earlier before the time where you're allowed, you're going to face a hardship penalty, so withdrawal. So with COVID, there were some changes that happened in 2020. So some of these rules are kind of like subject to change, and it's kind of depends on your company. And so I would really look into those. So, okay. Next. All right. Traditional and Roth IRAs. So these are individual retirement accounts. These are both separate individual retirement accounts, different from your 401k. So in these accounts, the difference between these ones and your 401k is that you can actually pick the individual investments within them. A lot of times within your 401k, you might not be able to pick individual stocks and bonds, and within these you can. Now, these don't inherently make money in there. So if you just put money in there, doesn't mean it's just going to grow. You still have to pick funds and different allocations within there. So the difference between a traditional and a Roth. So first of all, there's only a $6,000 limit for these accounts versus your 401k, it's $20,500. So there's differences there. So in the Roth, the money is post-tax. So when you're able to take this money out after your retirement age, it's actually tax-free. So it's growing at a tax-free rate versus your 401k, it's pre-tax. It's coming straight from your check into your 401k. So when you're actually going to withdraw it, you will get taxed on that. So traditional IRA is pre-tax, Roth post-tax. So, and then I already touched on the reasons why you might start one of these, because you might have you want different options within it. So, okay, next. All right, so this one, so I wanted to do something for the chat. So if you guys would like to think like an analyst, how you kind of consider, so in a bear market is a time when stocks and stock prices are down. So do you have two portfolios here? We have portfolio one that has all these companies, General Mills, Campbell's, Dollar General, Costco, Target, and then portfolio two. So in a market where prices are falling and maybe we're going into a recession, which portfolio would you guys, which would be a better bet? So maybe they can put it, maybe Sandra in the chat.
Yeah, I'm seeing them. So I'm seeing a couple of ones. The ones are coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like one is what the crowd is saying we should go with.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, everyone's doing a good job. So it is portfolio one. Portfolio one, because so you see in portfolio one, we have companies that are more stable. Well, actually, I won't say that. They are kind of based on when people are in a recession. And portfolio two, you can see like Louis Vuitton, Starbucks, Cheesecake Factory. When people are in a recession, these are all goods that they're not necessities. So they're not necessary. So I'm not going to go spend on a luxury bag when I'm kind of unsure about the future and what's going on right now. So, but people might start spending on cheaper things and going to the dollar store, buying soup, and the necessities like Target. They have all the groceries. People go to McDonald's. I mean, it's not good for you, but it's cheap. So in a time of a recession, people will go to more, and these are also, a lot of these are called value stocks. They pay dividends. They're kind of more stable, as opposed to some of the companies on the other portfolio, like Tesla is a growth stock. So they might not really pay dividends. So what you can do is, so some of these are called cyclicals. So they kind of go up and down depending on different times of the year, such as car stocks. And sure. But when there's a recession, you might invest in these General Mills and Campbell's Inc., and you make some money there on the way down. And then when you start seeing the economy recover, you might switch and start investing in like American Airlines or Carnival Cruise Lines. If you see people start going back towards the reopening place. So unless you really have the mentality of like, I don't really care, I'll just throw this money in here and just let it go for the long period, then you might just throw it in portfolio two for a long time. But portfolio one is a better play. All right, next. How much time do I have left, Sandra? Like 4 minutes or so?
I think another 5 minutes.
Okay.
John, can you keep me honest? I think it's about 5 minutes, or is it more or less?
It sounds about five, right? 5 is about
Okay.
right.
All right. I'll do this quick then. Okay. Yes. So asset allocation and portfolio overlap. So asset allocation is the mix of assets in your portfolio. So it's actually the way that it's divided among stocks, bonds, real estate, crypto, alternatives, derivatives. And it's really based on risk tolerance versus risk capability. So meaning you might be able to withstand a 10% drop in your portfolio, but how would that make you feel? If that scares you to death, then you might be too risky in your portfolio. So meaning you might have to go into more conservative investments or bonds. So that is the big thing on asset allocation. So this isn't a real good rule of thumb, but it's one that's, it's given out. You take your age and you subtract it from 100. So if you're 20, subtract, you get 80. So 80% of your portfolio will be in equities, so or stocks and mutual funds, and then the other 20% in bonds. Now, another thing is called portfolio overlap. So what this means is a lot of times you're saying, oh, I got these 10 different mutual funds, I got all these different companies, but you might have within these funds, they have holdings. So you might have 10 stocks that are the top holdings. Maybe they have Apple, Tesla in there, and then you have that separately. You own Apple on the side. So even though you have all these different funds, you're actually investing in a lot of the similar companies. So you have Apple here, and you have Apple in 3 of my funds. So when something happens to Apple, your whole portfolio is going to tank. So you want to look at what companies are actually in some of your funds in order to kind of diversify yourself. So that is the reason why a lot of times, and there's some sites and people that you can actually see that with, and it'll like kind of allocate it for you. So, okay, next. This one is pretty important. So college savings accounts. So for those of you that have kids, or or maybe you're planning for the future, or just to know, so there's a few different types of college savings accounts. There's one called 529s. They're the most popular. So they're tax advantage savings plans for college. So these accounts will grow tax deferred and are tax free if they're used for qualified education expenses. It just got raised. It used to be $15,000 per year, but it's $16,000 per year that you can put in there. And if you're a couple, if you're a married couple, then you can actually contribute a combined amounts of $32,000 per year. In addition, you can max fund it, so you can contribute like a 5-year one-time payment. Okay, 5-year one-time payment, or $160 per couple. Now you're saying, what if my kid doesn't want to go to college? There's other accounts called a UTMA. Now with these accounts, they'll be gifted to the kid right when they turn of age, so you won't have full control of it, versus the 529. In addition, if the first kid doesn't use it or he doesn't go to college, you can transfer it to your second kid and all that. And with the UTMA, you can actually pick different stocks and bonds within it, and the college savings plan, the 529, is picked by a company. All right, next. I don't think I have enough time for the next one. Taxes. Long-term capital gains, you'll pay shorter, you'll pay less. So if you hold it, for example, a stock over a year, but if you sell it within the year, you'll pay what are called short-term capital gains, which will be your ordinary income tax, which will usually be higher than the long-term. So that's why we talk about holding for the long-term. Okay. Next, and I think we're done. Maybe I'll touch on these at the end, Sandra. So we'll let John go.
I'll allow 1 minute or so for you to cover this, because I know that there are some people, including myself, that is very interested in this. So we're not going to skip past this. So please give it a moment and talk about it. And then you can go a little bit further once we get to Q&A, because I know that there are other people who have.
Okay, and I haven't looked at the questions in the chat yet, so maybe I'll look at them when John's going. So
No, that's fine. We'll look at the questions during that time, so you don't have to worry about that.
okay, all right. So cryptocurrencies and NFTs. NFTs are non-fungible tokens, so they're kind of digital versions of art. They can't be replicated, and there's a lot of different ways that they might have value on authenticating, for example, an art piece, and they attach an NFT to it, so then you can make sure that it is not a replica and not a fake. That is one reason, and you can also give like a royalty to the first person that made the digital art, and so these are really gaining popularity now. Actually, just made one myself. Cryptocurrencies, so decentralized digital forms of currency. They use an online ledger and strong cryptography, so to secure online transactions, and they're deregulated. That is one of the biggest proponents of them. There's millions of or different types of coins, and a lot of even big companies, banks are saying that they might look into using a cryptocurrency as collateral for loans. So they're slowly being adopted into the world as we go. Yeah, their cryptocurrency, and then the metaverse, virtual reality space that a lot of companies are trying to get into. So almost like a video game type thing. Computerized environment where you interact with others, or Web 3.0, similar things. So, all right. And I didn't do this justice, but it can take too long to go into all these things. So we're good.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh. Yeah, that was a lot, but it was a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information. So what I'm going to do is hand it over to John to pick up on the next topic. And Josh, I might talk to you offline about NFTs, because apparently you're an expert on that. You said you just built your first one, so definitely want to hear more about that experience. But yeah, I'm going to turn it over to John to take us away to talk about home ownership.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. So I'm going to talk about home ownership, but before I do, I want to add a couple of things to what Josh said. And one of the things one of the first things I want to add is that if you're a parent, start teaching your kids how to budget. It works. I had a child real quick that had $900 and something, and I gave her the last few dollars to get to 1,000, and she thought she was Warren Buffett. But the bad news is she wasn't. The good news is it started her setting goals. And so when we talked earlier about setting goals and going out and keep your numbers moving forward, I should say, start with your children budgeting, and part of the reason is there's really two reasons. One is it gets you off to a good place. The other reason is, and we say it jokingly, is that when you talk to your kids, the last thing they want, particularly when they become young adults, is parents to have messed up money and have to come live with them. Just the same way as parents, we don't want them to have to come live with us when we're older, right? So particularly in our communities, we all know that. So start with doing that. Another thing I want to add is, in lieu of birthday gifts, sometimes Christmas, give your kids some stock, give them some money, have them go into their stock account and purchase something. Let me give you, and we've done that with our kids for a few years now. And it's, let me give you X amount of shares of this or Y amount of shares of that, so on and so forth. So start doing that. The third thing I want to mention is, if you're a young person and you stay at home, put away everything you can. Act as if you're renting. And when I go through that budget I went through earlier, pay yourself the rent, pay yourself, put that away. You'd be amazed at how fast your money grows, particularly as we start talking about home ownership. And the last thing is, I know a lot of what Josh talked about is scary because it was scary for me, but you can also go on. I went to Yahoo and I just set up fake accounts when I did this with my brother for nieces and nephews and our children. And we just bought stocks because it is kind of scary and you do want to have a financial planner, but practice, start somewhere is my point. Don't just let it sit out there. So with that, I want to talk about home ownership. And home ownership is one of the oldest ways of building wealth. And again, as we talk about our road to $1 million, we want to talk about home ownership. So let's go to the next screen, please. Next slide, I'm sorry. Okay, so we want to talk about the cost of rent versus owning. And I will be the first to say home ownership as a lender, homes are expensive out there. So you have to be more creative, number one. Number two is that money is cheap, at least right now. Rates have been, for the longest, they were down in the 3s, some in the high 2s. Now they're up, I think, to maybe 4%. That's still great money. Rates have been high. When I started in the business, rates were as high as 15 to 17%. So the one thing I will tell you is that don't try and outguess the market. You can't do it, because I've heard people say, you know what, I'm not going to buy because I'm going to wait for the bubble. The problem is, if you wait for the bubble and the bubble doesn't happen for 2 years, maybe 5 years, the cost of the home could have gone up more than when it drops to where it's going to drop to. And I'm a victim of that. You know, I call myself waiting, and I got in and my house dropped $75,000, $80,000. It's okay. It went back up over a period of time. So, you know, again, the cost of renting versus the cost of owning, make sure you look at, you know, is it a good time to buy and what are the benefits of it? So let's go to the next slide, please, Sandra. Okay, so let's talk about inside the numbers. And this is always fun for me, because it's like, when you look at rent, if you pay $1,500 to $2,500 per month, and I know rents are just really high. There's a lot of fighting in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. over, you know, rent control, so on and so forth. This is the amount of money you're putting out. Literally, you're putting out somewhere between, you know, depending upon how long you look at it, between $18,000 and $30,000 per year. And in a 10-year period, that changes, that goes tenfold, 180 to 300,000. So keep that in mind. That's a lot of money to be putting out. And let's go to the next slide, because if that's the negative side of it, let's clearly talk about the positive side of it. So if I'm putting that out, let's say I purchase a home and my payment is about $3,100 a month. The value in 5 years, you can see, even if it only goes up 3%, and I know there's realtors that will tell you, John, houses appreciate way more than 3%. But the value of that $500,000 house is now $579. In 10 years, let's say it's 672, and those numbers go up exponentially if you start looking at what the real growth of house prices has been. Well, let's say you're balanced at the same time, because as your value goes up, your balance starts to go down, okay? So let's say in 5 years, your balance is 434, but your value of your house is 579. The difference between the two is about $146,000. So that's what you call equity. And that's just money that I have. So if I decided to sell my house, get rid of it, whatever the case may be, look at the amount of equity I have and compare that with the previous slide. And the numbers are still up there. In 5 years, I spent $150,000. Whereas if I own in 5 years, I've literally made $146,000. Again, these are real conservative numbers, but I want to share with you the whole thing about why you'd want to own. Okay. Another thing, and let's go to the next slide, please. So before we talk about qualifying, let me tell you that I know one of the things I hear all the time is I don't want to buy a home because, you know, it's not like my parents' home. I will share this with you. Your first home isn't necessarily your last home, but it is a home, okay? I've heard also, I don't want to buy a condo because I'm sharing a wall. When you go back to the previous slide and you look at how much money I'm spending, I'd rather own a condo than, you know, what's it going to take me to buy a single family home? One of the other things I want to talk about is the tax benefits. And I didn't put a slide in here for that, but talk to your CPA, because that is the person that can tell you. But when you start looking at tax benefits, part of the value of owning a home is if you own a home under today's tax laws, and this is 2021 and is true also for 2022, in most cases, your interest is deductible and your taxes are deductible. So in simple terms, in layman's terms, what that means is, let's say I make $80,000 a year, but I'm paying 20,000 and I'm paying taxes on 80,000 a year. Well, that's about $16,000. But if my taxes and my interest on the loan come up to, let's say, 30,000 a year, well, I get to deduct that off my taxes. And again, you have to talk to your CPA. So I want to make it real clear. I'm not giving CPA advice, but talk to your CPA and ask them, if I had this much in tax deductions, what does that mean? Well, if I have 80,000 and I subtract off 30, I'm left with 50,000. Now I'm paying 20% on 50,000. That's 10,000 versus 16,000 you're paying in taxes. That's $6,000 a month more in your pocket. That's why when you hear lenders talk about and advocate for, you should own a home, you should buy, it is a tax benefit. The other thing you have is your rent doesn't go up every year because your taxes, your payment stays the same for the most part. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but your rent goes up. You know, every time you get a raise, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. So again, we want to make sure that we, if you get a chance to buy, do so, please. Now, qualifying for a house, how much home can I buy? What's the debt to income ratio? There's actually three things we look at. Number one is your down payment. Number two is your credit, and I'll talk about that next. And then there's something called your debt to income ratio. And all that is, it's a fancy way of lenders saying what's your expenses versus what's your income. And there are numbers that we have to abide by, guidelines we have to follow. That'll tell you how much house you can buy. That's why when we talked earlier about having that professional lender in your on your team, call that person, find out. Here's what I make, here's what I take home, so on and so forth. Here's all the income I have. This is how much house I can buy. Okay. Let's go to the next slide if we can. Let's talk about one of our favorite things, credit. And you have traditional credit, which is your credit cards, car payments, so on and so forth. And that's the stuff you see, you know, everybody for the most part has it. There's also something called non-traditional credit. If you're just getting started, you can have your utility bills put on there. Do I pay auto insurance? Do I pay life insurance? How do I pay them? So on and so forth. Those are things, again, your credit is nothing more than a fancy way of saying, this is my word, this is my bond, I promise to pay you. If I borrow $10 from my sister, I better be able to give $10 back to my sister in the time frame that I agree to give it to her. Credit is extremely important and it affects everything. And let's go to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Sandra, thank you. So let's talk about a little bit about credit. You have something called FICO scores, which is a Fair Isaac score, okay? Everyone in here, if you don't have it, please go get it. Go online to one of the free credit report sites. Make sure you have your credit reports. There are three of them. There's TransUnion, there's Equifax, and there's Experian. Get your credit report and ask for your FICO scores. It may cost you $5, $10, $15, whatever the price is, but you want to have them for several reasons. One is you want to know what your score is, because your score affects, in lending, your score affects your interest rate. It's the difference between myself and the person standing next to me having everything the same job, same income, but I have a credit score of, let's say, 620, and they have a credit score of 760. Their payment might be a couple $100 less than mine. Okay, so make sure you know what your FICO score is and that you get it, and see what you can do to get your score raised. But credit is one of the most important things that you can have. And when you want to, the one thing you want to know about credit, late payments, okay? Late payments are only considered late if they're 30 days or more after they're due. So if my payment is due on the 15th and I pay it on the 16th of next month, it's 30 days past due. If I pay it on the 14th of next month, it is not 30 days past due. So figure out 30 days and make sure you understand that you never want your payments to be over 30 days late. There's a caveat in that though. If they're late, most creditors are going to charge you what's called a late fee. If you look at a credit card statement, they'll charge you, mortgage statement, they charge you a late fee because they usually give you about 15, 20 days. You don't want to waste money there either. So again, when you're looking at late payments, make sure you understand that the only thing that's going to report on a credit report that will affect your score negatively will be 30 days or more late. However, you're also giving away money when you're paying lenders late payments. Okay. Second thing you need to know about FICO score, inquiries. And inquiries happen simply because I allow someone to run my credit. I'm shopping for a car. I'm not sure which dealer I'm going to go with because I need to see who's going to have the best price for me. And everywhere I go, they run my credit report. They run my credit report. By the time I get to the fifth or sixth dealer, inquiries lower your score. What happens is, yeah, I got the best price, but I also got a higher rate because now my credit score has gone up. I just did this for someone, a good friend of mine. I said, get your credit reports, get all three of them. You're going to shop. She was going to shop at 5 or 6 different dealers. I said, take them your credit report. Ask them what their rate is, what their payment is based on your credit report. When you finally get to the person that you're going to buy the car with or the dealer that you're going to buy the car with, that's who you allow to run your credit. Okay. The inverse of that is I've had people go to 8 different dealers with 8 different inquiries and then come back, and at the end, their credit was lower. Their credit score may have been lower 10, 20, 50 points, and a lot because, again, inquiries kill them. So make sure you understand. Next thing is, let's talk about bad credit because it happens and things happen realistically. If you have bad credit, it is not the end of the world, believe me. Just figure out what's on there. What can I pay? How can I pay it? I hear the ad on the radio that says, you know what, come down and get a car. Come down and get a car and we can finance you because besides, who has good credit anyway? That is one of the worst ads in the world. And it's on a radio station that I've heard. And you can have good credit, or you have good credit, or have the potential of getting good credit. But if I have bad credit, what do I need to do to clean it up? Do I have bills that are outstanding? I have people that I've seen that have medical bills. I thought my insurance paid it. Talk to people, get it deleted. And again, this is why you want to have your credit report. If it's on there and it shouldn't be on there because my insurance paid it, have it taken off. You can dispute. I talk to people all the time, and there's a dispute letter I have that I send them that says, you send it directly to the credit bureau and you say, ABC company should not have this on here. My insurance paid it, so on and so forth. That's one of the things, again, you want to know. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about is, and let's go to the next slide. And let's go one more. We'll talk about that a little bit. Money for a down payment. Okay. As we've talked about saving money, talk with your lender. Okay. You can have all kinds of money. Talk with your lender. If you have a gift, let's say my uncle's giving me money, talk with your lender. Don't play musical chairs with your money. Money can be gifted to you. Okay. Let your lender show you how to do it. It is real easy to do. And it's not something, again, that's going to take a lot, but you want to do it so you can have good sources. Not good sources, but so that it can be done properly. We have to complete underwriting guidelines. So let us help you with that. If you have cash, an important one, make sure that you talk with your lender so they can tell you how to deal with cash. Let's go one more slide. And this is kind of an abbreviated version, so we'll go one more after that. And we talked about taxes, so I'll just share a couple of other things. Types of loans, they're conventional, they're first-time buyers. Again, talk with your lender, get the loan that's tailored for you. Number 2 is, in closing on this, real estate agents. Talk with the lender, talk with your friends, find out who had a good real estate agent, who had a bad experience. There are some good ones, there are some bad ones. Talk with people, find out. Again, you've already created a network, as we talked about at the beginning. And the last thing is, let's go one more slide, Sandra. I think there's one more. And one more after that. We talked about types of loans. Most loans are fixed. Again, find out what all my options are. It's like going to a restaurant and looking at the menu. Pick everything out you want to look at. Okay. And lastly, the home buying process. Everything pretty much is automated. Find you someone that's going to help you. Okay. No matter where you're at. If you get a chance to own. And I know this is a real abbreviated version of home ownership, But I want to make sure, and I think there may be even one more. Is there one more slide, Sandra, after this? I believe. Yeah, when you go through the process, talk to a lender, find out how much you qualify for, you go through escrow, so on and so forth. Again, if you get a chance to own, own. And if I can't buy today, can I buy tomorrow? What do I need to do to get there? So I think that's it for this on home ownership, Sandra. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra, and I think Josh and I have a couple things we'll conclude with, and then we'll go from there.
That was great. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it, even though I know you went through that pretty fast, but I think you shared some really good information just in thinking about the whole process, the whole journey when it comes to the home buying process. And I do appreciate that point that you shared about, it's a minor thing, but I think it's a big thing when you shared about, hey, you may not be, you're probably thinking, I don't want a condo. I don't want a townhouse. I want a house with my own yard and backyard because I don't want to share a wall. But just thinking about the opportunities that come with just having a condo, even though you have that shared wall, but you're saving a lot of money and you have an opportunity over time to build up equity. So I appreciate that because I think that's going to be helpful to a lot of people and just kind of reframing and thinking about the opportunity with respect to getting a condo versus staying in an apartment that you're paying rent on every month. So I really do appreciate you sharing that. So I know the two of you have additional thoughts that you want to share and kind of close us out before we head over into to Q&A.
So one of the things we're going to do is I think we're going to put it in the, are we going to put it in there for people to read? There is
the presentations.
Exactly.
So they're asking if we can put the slides in to share. Arnicia, are they available?
Yeah, we'll get to that, Josh. Right now, we're just doing the summation of our actual presentation.
Okay, good.
So one of the things is, and Josh, I think is going to talk about the 30-day action plan. But for me, I will say this, that, you know, again, I think we said thank you. And the last thing I wanted to add, I know we talked at the beginning about why we're doing this, and it's generational. In our communities, we have to pass this information on. And I will share this quick story with you. In 1983, 82, 83, somewhere up in there, my boss told me I knew I was due for a raise in my performance evaluation, and your raise is based on it. And my boss, and I'm a brother from Compton, went to school at Irvine, and I was working in Irvine. And long story short, she said, what would happen if you didn't get a raise? And of course, being a brother from Compton, what did I say? Well, I'm not going to tell you what I said, but at any rate, long story. When it came time to do my evaluation, she said, I have good news, bad news. You got a great evaluation, which meant max raise, but you're not going to get any money. And she slid me a piece of paper and said, here's a 401k. This is what you're going to sign up for. And you're not going to just read the sports section every lunch hour, as I see you doing. You're going to read the business section of the LA Times, and you're going to read the Wall Street Journal. And she and I sat and we worked together for a couple of years. And the reason I share that story is that she started me somewhere. And what I learned was, and as she told me, she said, my children are older than you, but this is what we do all the time. When we sit at the table, and I know we want to talk about reality TV and whatever else we talk about, and what's going on in life, spend some time, as we talked about that network, spend some time talking about this. This is what we need to do in our community, and we make ourselves better. I saw Harry LeGrand post something about an investment group. Even if you're not putting together your money, pull together your knowledge and resources, folks. It is the best thing you could do. So with that, I want to say, you know, again, it works. It truly does. It works. So with that, Josh, and then I think we have a 30-day action plan we're going to put out there and give you something to take home, please.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. It was a pleasure. Obviously, you know, different views on us. I'm still starting a lot of my journey, you know, but you have a good foundation in place and it makes it a lot easier. And you have people that, you know, you can have in your corner, you know, someone like John or different, you know, mentors, and it can definitely help into building that good financial base. So yeah, we made a 30-day financial action plan that Sandra and Arnisha are going to put in the chat, and in there we detail a lot of things, some articles to read, different things you can do, a calendar so you can check it off, different ideas for apps such as automating your tracking your expenses, and so all the above, it's all there. So.
And let me add one more thing before we give it back to Sandra, and that is that this video is being recorded and it will be passed out. I think they said that earlier, but it is recorded and will be sent to you. So whatever you didn't get, whatever you think you missed, I know they said take notes. It is being recorded and it will be sent out to you. So again, thank you. Sandra, or we'll do Q&A, or Sandra and Arnicia, and you'll let us know.
Yeah, we are going to go into Q&A. So folks, if you have any questions, now's the time to put it in the Q&A section, not the chat. So then that way we can keep track of it, and hopefully we'll have time to answer them all. So please be sure to type in your questions in the Q&A. I just want to say thank you so much to Josh and John. This was so informative. These are very big topics and just so critical. And I'm just glad that we were able to just scratch the surface and address some of those key areas within that. And as one of you said earlier, it's really about doing the research, finding out that information for yourself, set up that money team, and find people who can answer the questions for you. And I will say this, as people are putting their questions in the chat, I do want to encourage you to keep your questions as broad and as general as possible, just to protect yourself, your information, and offer a bit of privacy. And then also an opportunity for everyone else to take advantage of the question that you're having, and hopefully it'll answer a question that they have. So I really encourage you, as you're thinking about questions, keep them as general as possible, as broad as possible. All right. So, so the questions are trickling in, which is really exciting. I'm really happy about that. But there were a few questions that came in before we started this webinar, and I just wanted to address those. So then that way we're able to move right along with respect to that. So Josh, you said something earlier that was interesting. You were talking about the 529, and just to clarify that. So when it comes to 529, if you have a parent or parents, they're contributing into that account. You were saying that if it turns out that their child or children decide not to go to college, that there's something else that they can do with that money. So I was just trying to see if you can address that part, so that way it's clear for everyone.
So with a 529 account, you can withdraw it, but you'll be penalized if it's not for education expenses. But if you say you have two kids, kid one doesn't use it, you can use that money for kid number two, or for yourself if you go back to college, or also you can use it for different education. You can use it for high school, middle school, whatever. If you send them to like a private school. So.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you for that. And John, you were talking about FICO scores, right? And I think one thing that's important to recognize is that when it comes to FICO scores, maybe some people aren't aware that there are different versions of FICO. Right. So there's FICO 2, which interestingly enough, a lot of organizations are still relying on. Then you have FICO 8, FICO 9, I believe FICO 10 was recently released, or it's on its way of being released. So I just wanted to touch on that. Maybe you can clarify that, like what do we need to know from a consumer standpoint when it comes to these different FICO score versions that are available? Because again, if we're going in for a loan, let's say for a car loan or some other different type of loan, and now we know our score, but the score that's being pulled by the potential lender, they have a different score. And now it's just because it's affected by the different FICO score versions that they're using. So maybe you could address that, please.
Yeah, FICO scores generally have a scoring. There are different scoring models out there. Mortgage lenders use what's called a residential mortgage credit report, and that is the model that we use. Generally, as a rule of thumb, though, I will say that most of the scores are fairly close. There's not a big variance. And you can literally look at them side by side to see what the difference is. But you want to when you look at your FICO scores, most of them should be fairly close. So if it's 710 versus 715, 720, 725, it's usually about the same. It's just a different model that they're using. The other side of it is, though, if it's dramatically different, then you need to find out what's the difference between the two reports. Okay. And again, your FICO scores they're just invaluable. So make sure you raise them as high as you can and find out what you need to do to raise them. And let me add one other thing, and I didn't mention it in my presentation. When you look at FICO scores, let's say my FICO score is 735, make sure you know and you talk with your lender about it, because if you can raise it 5 points by maybe paying off a debt, by maybe doing something else, maybe 7.4 gets me a better rate. 740, I should say, gets me a better interest rate. So be just very aware of your FICO scores, and also make sure that everything on there belongs to you. Because oftentimes if you have a common last name, I'm James Smith, then there could be something on there that doesn't belong to me that's affecting my FICO score negatively. Right.
Thank you for that. So moving right along to the next question that we have. Let's see. So someone said, I preach to my children to start a retirement account now and to invest in traditional vehicles like mutual funds while time is on their side, but they are stuck on investing in cryptocurrencies and electronic day trading. What would you say is your position on these new investment opportunities versus the traditional vehicles? Josh, I know you kind of touched on this, but just given the lens of this question, how would you address that?
Yeah, and so I think there's a piece in their portfolio for cryptocurrencies, as well as their day trading. So they're doing option trading for Jeffrey. But strictly investing in that, I mean, they're almost gambling. It's a lot of speculative trading. I think the traditional vehicles are still better, but they're just not discounting the other investments. There is a small portion available for them in their portfolio in the allocation. So piece of it is good, I think.
Great. So next question. Let's see. So one of our attendees has stated that they educate, as a life insurance agent, they educate their clients that whole life insurance is a great way to invest our money tax-free. Do you add whole life insurance to a person's portfolio in financial planning? I'll direct this question to both of you.
I'll say yes, life insurance is a big portion of financial planning, just covering your assets. I wouldn't put all of it, base all their insurance, their life insurance based on whole life. We might put most of it in a term because it's cheaper, and then invest the rest. But I think a whole life or a permanent policy is good and does have a place, so that they don't lose it, and it's more expensive for the years to come. So small portion, yes. Overall, maybe add some term, but it is important. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to that what Josh, I would defer to Josh, number one. And number two is, I would say it depends upon where you are in life too. Because if something happens to myself or my spouse or my children, what position am I in and where am I at in life? And that's going to affect my insurance. So whole life can definitely be great. And it depends upon, again, where you're at and the cost. The younger you get it, from anybody that doesn't know, usually the younger you are, the cheaper, as a rule of thumb, general rule of thumb, the cheaper the insurance is. So it's cheaper for me at 20 than it's going to be at age 50.
That's a good point. Thanks for sharing that. So next question we have is related to down payment assistance programs. So we probably have all seen the ads, seen all the information coming through, just pretty much saying that these programs, these organizations can help you pay down your debt, especially if you owe thousands and thousands of dollars to various creditors. So the question is, are down payment assistance programs based on income? So this question's for either of you, if you have any knowledge around this area.
I think John can take down.
Well, I think there are two things, and there are two questions in there. One is, down payment assistance usually refers to, are there programs that help me with the down payment? Absolutely, they are. Most of them are based on income now. So some of them are based on income. Some of them are based on you having what your maximum income is compared to the median income for the county that you're buying in. So if you're buying in LA County, it may be 80% of the income, it may be 100% of the income. It just varies. Again, you want to kind of tailor the program based on what your situation is, but there are some down payment assistance programs, okay? The other part of the question, though, Sandra, that you asked, it's very important to remember, marketing can be very misleading, so be aware. And I've heard we can consolidate all your debt so you don't have to make a payment, and I've seen that happen, but it can also ruin your credit. So make sure that you understand all the little bitty things, because now I don't have to pay this much money, I can pay a much smaller amount, but they've just contacted my creditors and now my credit has gone downhill. So make sure that you understand that if I'm doing that, what are the ramifications of it? It's like payday loans, and you can get a payday loan to hold me over till payday, but if I'm paying 30-35% on it, it's probably something you may want to see what other options or alternatives are available to you. But yes, down payment does work. And it just, you have to find, again, what a person's situation is.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing about the part about the payday loans. And I think that's really important. That's critical, because what's happening now, and feel free to add more to this part of the conversation, but there are more and more potential lenders and organizations that are not only just looking at your FICO score, but they're looking at alternative credit that you are engaging with, like payday loans, rent to own furniture, looking at utility bills, cell phone payments, right? They're looking at that information and combining that with your FICO score to get a sense as to your, what's the phrase? Just looking at your financial credit worthiness to see whether to offer you that loan or not. And so typically your credit report doesn't report on that information, right? And so that's traditional. However, a lot of organizations, including, let's say you want to go in for a car loan, they're looking at that information as well, because they know that's important, and they want to make sure that if they are extending credit to you and letting you walk away with the keys to the car and letting you drive off the lot, they want to feel comfortable extending that loan to you. So they're looking at as much information as possible when it comes to your financial credit history. So as you're thinking about not only paying off paying off your loans and keeping up with your payments in other areas, these lenders are looking at that as well. So I appreciate you sharing that part, because I think that's important for our audience to be mindful of and be aware of.
And let me add one other quick thing to it. When you talk about, and I just got a text from my boss who was listening in, and the average income limit in the down payment assistance programs is about $150,000 a year. And you have to have a 640 minimum FICO. So if you're interested in that, there are programs out there that will work for you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So on that note about credit, before we pivot to a different direction, there are a lot of tools that are out there, and there are a lot of organizations that talk about, hey, we're going to help you understand your credit. We are going to help you understand and give you and share alerts and notifications if there's anything that comes up. So what comes to mind are organizations like Credit Karma and CreditWise, right? And so I was wondering if one of you or even both of you can speak to that, and just being cognizant that not all of these organizations may be legitimate or credible. So what are some things we need to look out for when we are potentially trying to engage with that?
Probably the first thing you want to look out for is, what is the cost? Because there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that will do it for next to nothing. But if I'm being asked to pay some money to clean up my credit, it may be legitimate, it may not be legitimate, but look and see if you could find a nonprofit. I think if there's something, that I can help you clean up your credit with. The other thing is that a lot of it you're able to do too, and if you talk with your lender, a lot of it you can do yourself. When you dispute items, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but if you're disputing something, some of it you can do yourself. It's a matter of writing letters, emails. It'll cost you postage. and finding out, again, what's on there, making sure that it's accurate and what you can do to raise your score. But I would say look at the nonprofits, because then if you're looking at someone where I don't have to spend a bunch of money or any money to find out what I need to do to raise my score, then that would be, I would say, one of the legitimate organizations, because there are some bad ones out there. And they'll usually charge you because they want something out of it for their time and service.
Right. Right. That's a good point.
And legitimate lenders cannot charge you, even if they wanted to, cannot and will not charge you for being able to help you write a letter or telling you what you need to do and so on and so forth. So
that's a good point. So we'll keep that in mind, as that's a red flag. If any lender tries to tell you, oh yeah, we can, here's what you do, and here are the steps you can take, and we can write that for you. So that's, we'll take that as a red flag. So thanks for sharing that. So I'm going to pivot back to real estate for a moment. And so I'm just going to close it out with the last few questions that we have in the chat. So in the Q&A rather, before we move on, because we covered a lot. And so with the next question we have here, what is the difference between FHA and conventional?
Briefly, the difference is down payment amount. FHA normally requires 3.5%. That is the big difference. In LA County, for example, they'll go a little over 900,000, I believe is the max limit. The difference is sometimes their debt to income ratio. I can buy a little bit more house by having FHA. Conventional, I can get away with as little as sometimes 3%, sometimes 5%. And there's something called mortgage insurance. And again, I won't go into great detail, but when you put down less than 20%, you pay mortgage insurance on it, but I may not be able to buy as much house. The last thing, the other biggest difference is FHA will take credit scores in some cases down to 580. Conventional, depending upon how much you're putting down, may require 680, 640, 700, depending upon what the program is. So again, what you do is you tailor the program based on, can I go conventional? Can I go FHA? What's the difference in rate, payment, mortgage insurance? And then you look at both and you kind of pick and choose.
Okay, great. Continuing with that, what if someone inherited their home? And so how do they go about in transferring that into their name so that way they can receive tax benefit on that?
It's kind of a two-part question or a two-person professional question. And one is, if you inherited the home, whose name is the home in now? Because if the home is in my name and my mom's, and we were joint tenants on the home, there's something, you fill out something called an affidavit of death of joint tenant, and you do that. If not, and you want to get it, and you have to get it transferred in your name, is there a will? Is there a estate? And that's the second part of the professional, which, as you mentioned earlier, will be here at our next presentation, and they're going to talk about estate planning. But talk to your lender, find out what it looks like, what the title or how the house reads now, what it should be. And then most lenders can refer you to an estate professional if that's what you need, or if it's just some recording information you need and you have to just change it around, they can refer you to an escrow company and tell you what to do, but they know who the people are. If they don't know, they know who to find out to tell you how I can change my home so that I make sure it's in my name and I'm getting a tax benefit and so on and so forth. And again, they'll refer you to your CPA to make sure that all three are in alignment with what you want to be able to do.
And definitely make sure it's in your, transfer it so it's in your will and your estate, for the future. If something happens, because if something happens to you, and then for example, your kids are trying to get control, that home is going to go through probate and through the courts, and it's going to be a huge pain for them. So transfer it into your will or your estate.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So we have 3 questions left. So we're going to close out the Q&A from there. And these last few questions, I'm going to turn it over to you, Josh. So we have a 2-part question. So and John, feel free to chime in wherever necessary. But the first part of the question is, are you able to give an overview between the relationship between the current high inflation rate and its impact on the Federal Reserve's plan to raise interest rates targeted to start in March 2022?
Yeah. So with the high interest rates, when March of 2020 happened and the economy was tanking because of COVID, the Fed basically, they cut their rates to kind of stimulate the economy, so then people can buy, and then so then we didn't just go into a super depression. So going forward, now we have high inflation, which that's kind of what they were planning. That's what they were hoping for. But now it's here and people are freaking out. And so in order to combat that, what they're going to do is they're going to cut rates in order to slow down the spending. And what that means for everyone is that it might cost more to borrow to pay for a car or a loan. So it's gonna be more expensive to do that. So then people are just not going to purchase that car, and so that's gonna slow inflation. So that's kind of what their goal is, and that's what I believe is gonna happen. So.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, the
And
other
the
thing I
second-
would just add is it asks about home loans, bank junk fees, so on and so forth.
Right.
It's hard to say what it's going to do. It's literally impossible to say what it's going to do. But just again, talk with your professionals, find out, and and Josh answered it perfectly. So bank junk fees, and we literally have no influence over that at this point.
All right. So last question. Apparently we have some folks who are very interested in hearing more about Josh's background and how he came to this career. So if you can, just let us know, how did you get your job? Like, did you do it through internships? Like, how did that, so what was just briefly let us know, like, what was that like for you? What was your journey?
My first internships, I was working in the finance department for the city of Santa Ana. I moved between the budget department and the credit analyst purchasing department. And then I got a internship. My first job out of college was a financial advisor position with Prudential in Irvine through a Black men's club that I helped start at UCI with Fred, actually. And we would have different speakers come in, and we had an advisor come in and speak, and I just followed up with him, and that's how I got my start in the industry. And then I've been in my new role for about 6 months now at Capital Group, so it's fairly new. Yep. So internships are definitely the way to go.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right. Well, looks like we've covered everything. I know we had another question about credit scores and FICO. We already addressed that earlier. So yeah, so I just want to say thank you all so much for just the presentations, for answering all these questions. I know I'm not only speaking for myself, but for speaking for everyone else that joined the call today, that this was very informative. And I know that I will be watching this recording just to kind of backtrack on some of the things that you all shared, and really just figuring out what will be the next best actions for myself, and really using some of the documents that you all shared. So I'm really appreciative of that. And so I'm assuming, since we're not all together, we would have an applause at this point. So I really encourage everyone. There was a link shared for the 30-day plan. So please click on that link. So that way it gives you a list of 30 actions that you can take, and then you can schedule it out accordingly for yourself to be able to help you move further along in your journey and your goals when it comes to investments, home ownership, and retirement. So with that said, let's have a little fun, play a game, and we'll pull this up and share my screen. All right.
They're looking for the 30-day financial plan link. If we could resend it for the in the chat.
We will do that in just a moment.
Okay, Anisha got it.
Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
So just go ahead and come on in. Make sure you're using your real name so we can connect with you, because we do have the $25 Amazon gift cards to give out once the game is over. All right, just waiting for a few more folks to join us. Want to try and make this as interesting as possible. As people are still trickling in, just so you know, if you're not familiar with the game, the way it's going to work is that we will have about 10 questions related to some of the information and content that we shared with you today. And so you will get points based on the correct answer and how fast you submitted the correct answer. So the game does move fast. So make sure you pay attention, read the question, and select the right answer. So I'll just give it another minute so a few more people can join, because
see some people are raising their hands in the.
So the game started. I believe.
Can we start it over?
Let me see if I can start it over. Hold on one second. What was that about the?
I said I saw a few people raising their hands in the chat.
I think. Let me see.
They're good.
We're good.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
take internal.
Okay.
If you have a question, you could type it in the chat.
All
I
right.
know that we are giving out 3 $25 Amazon gift certificates. So.
And then we're done after that, right? Because I think we went a little over.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are.
All right. I had to close that out, so I'm going to restart it. So I apologize for that. All right, can everyone see my screen? I'm resuming it now. I apologize for the technical difficulties, everyone. Can everyone see my screen? All right. All right, I'll just give it another minute for a few more people, because I think we have one other person or two other people. All right, we will start in less than 10 seconds. So good luck to everyone. The top 3 winners will receive a gift card. All right, here we go. All right, what is a bear market? Does anyone remember what is a bear market? Hope you chose the right answer. All right, a market of falling stock prices. All right. All right, Tori's already in the lead. All right, true or false, the limit for contributions to our 401k. Does anybody remember? All right, all answers in. It's true. It's 20,500 if you're under 50. All right, let's see. Okay, the leaderboard has changed, but Tori's still at the top. Let's see, what's the next question? What is the biggest expense of the average person's monthly budget? All right, it's housing. All right, let's see where we are at the leaderboard. All right, Tori's still in the lead. Okay. So let's see, next question. True or false, a 529 account is a retirement account? All right, one more. Let's see. One more answer before we see the correct answer. True or false? Answer is false. Most people got it. That's good. So let's look at the leaderboard. All right. Tori is still in the lead. Okay. If you buy a company's stock, do you own it? You lent money to them, you're liable for their debt, or you won the lottery? What does that mean? What's the answer? You own a part of the company. All right, everyone's got that right. That's awesome. So let's look at the leaderboard. Okay, Tori's still in the lead. Nice. Next question, risk tolerance and risk capability are the same thing, true or false? What's the correct answer? It is false. They are not the same thing. Let's look at the leaderboard. All right, Caroline, she took over the top spot. All right, we got a few more questions. Let's see what happens. The earliest age at which you can withdraw from your retirement account without a penalty is what age? What is the correct number? Let's see, just a few more seconds. Correct answer is 59 and a half. All right. All right, we got a new leader on the board. All right, Hawa. All right. The payment installments on a 15-year mortgage will be less than those on a 30-year mortgage. True or false? What's the correct answer? All right, just a few more answers. All right, counting down, last couple of seconds. It is false. All right, let's look at the leaderboard. All right, Hawa is still in the lead. All right. Last couple of questions. An average emergency fund consists of 3 to 6 months of living expenses. True or false? Everyone got it right. It's true. All right, let's look at the leaderboard again. All right, Hawa is still in the lead. And we're coming into our last question. Good luck, everyone. Which company composes a larger percentage of the S&P 500? Let's see if we can get this right. All right, a couple more answers. Okay, it is Apple. I know you're optimistic, thought it was UC Irvine, but no, it wasn't the case. All right, here we are with our top winners, Hawa, Imani, and Caroline. Thank you all so much for participating. I hope you all enjoyed that. So for those of you that have won, as you can see in the chat, please put your full names in the chat so that way we can reach out to you and send you your prize. You'll be receiving that shortly. But yeah.
Your email address.
And your email address as well. So that way we can send out that those prizes to you. But thank you again to everyone that has participated. Hope you found that to be a fun little exchange and reinforced some of the things that we shared with you in this conversation. So what I will do here is.
Still waiting on the winners to put their information in the chat, please.
Yes.
One more person.
Thank you. Yes, make sure you put your name in the chat so I can send your Amazon gift card to you. I'll be sending it to you digitally, so you'll need to check it in your email, and it'll take about a week for us to make that all the magic of that happen. So congratulations to those winners. Also, I also want to mention that I can make these resources available to you all, and I can send you all a personal email from UCI with all the wonderful resources available that these presenters gave to us today.
Thanks for that, Wendy. So if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us, as you can see on this screen. Our email address is ucibaa@gmail.com. So if you have any questions about what we presented today, or if you're just interested in learning more about our chapter and getting involved, feel free to contact us. So with that said, as we wrap up, just want to remind you that our next event is scheduled for March, where we will take a deep dive into caregiving and estate planning. I think this lends itself well as a continuation of conversation that we had today around the various topics relating to retirement and financial investments. So please stay tuned for more details, especially when it comes to registering for that event. So without further ado, once again, thank you all for your time and your participation. I don't have any other words to share, so I'll turn it over to Arnesia if you have any closing words.
I think you were able to cover everything. Thank you once again from the Black Alumni Association and the UC Irvine Alumni Association. We thank you for your participation. We look forward to your continued engagement in our health and wellness series. And we are willing to continue to move you forward. If you have any topics that you want covered, please feel free to contact us at that email address again. And we hope that today's resources will help you have a better financial future. Have a great one, and remember, Zot, Zot, Zot.